Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Hello, PR Maven Nation. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode 147, presented by Marshall Communications. I'm just going to say we're having a lot of feedback and extra noise here. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but...
Do you want me to try muting when you're talking?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Yeah, that's good. Okay. So for those of you who are new to the show, I'm your host, Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. And with me today, our guest is Rob Tod, who's the owner of Allagash Brewing Company. Rob, welcome to the PR Maven Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, and if there is a little background noise, I'm at the brewery and there's a truck backing up below my window and the bottling line is running behind me, so it's a little noisy here.
Well, it's the real thing. It's authentic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So after graduating from Middlebury College with a major in geology, Rob headed west, and following a few years in Colorado, he suspected his track would eventually lead him either back to geology or woodworking. Before heading down one of those paths, he took a detour to Vermont, where he washed kegs at Otter Creek Brewery. And while at Otter Creek, he happened upon the beers of Belgium. He just happened upon them. That happens to me too. I just happened upon some beers and then I just happened to drink them. It's a problem. It's a problem. I sometimes happen upon some wine too. Sorry. I'm guilty. Oh my God.
So right. I won't be in for the rest of the day. I just happened upon some beer. You know?
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. In these inventive and surprising brews, Rob saw an opportunity to give American beer drinkers an experience they had never had. So he left a steady pay and founded Allagash Brewing Company way back in the last century in 1995. I started my company in the last century also. So congratulations.
It kind of seems like yesterday, but I guess it was a long,
yeah,
the last century and a quarter century ago.
Yeah, right, exactly. The brewery has since grown from a one-man operation into one of the top 50 craft breweries in the U.S. by sales volume, and has earned a spot on Maine's Best Places to Work list for 7 years running. That's awesome. Rob is the past chair of the Brewers Association Trade Group, and he received the James Beard Award for Outstanding Wine, Beer, or Spirits Producer in 2019. So, Rob, I feel like I'm in the presence of a celebrity here, so I'm a little starstruck. So
definitely not a celebrity, but the business has sure grown more than I ever thought it would. I mean, I thought when I retired, we'd maybe have like 4 or 5 employees and just be selling beer in Maine, maybe half of New England, but it's taken a little bit of a different path than I ever would have thought.
Yeah, well, that's, I'm sure, due to a lot of hard work on your part.
Well, and the team, we have an extremely capable and passionate team here. Well, they're really the ones who have made it happen.
Well, I'm sure that's due to your leadership too. You've attracted them. So what role do you feel that breweries play in the Maine brand? Actually, I was out with my 25-year-old son last night, and a cousin of ours had come up from Massachusetts, and they're big brewery fans. And we were talking about like how Maine has just so many breweries, and how do you think that came about?
Well, the short answer is yes. I think Maine breweries play a huge part in the Maine brand. But the longer answer is, if I just think of my experience in this industry, which is 27-ish years, however long ago 1994 was. But I mean, back then, people did not come to Maine to visit breweries. There were 15 or so breweries. Especially if you were a production brewer, you were generally in an industrial park. People came to Maine to ski or to go to the coast or to the beach, or the dining experience was getting going, or maybe you're going to Acadia, but you surely didn't come up to go to breweries. And it's funny because when I started in 95 and opened my doors, I had a sign over the door that said tours and tastings, whenever we're open, basically. And I was showing my parents the brewery one day, and my mom looked at the sign and saw tours. And she looked at me because she goes, "You know what, Rob? No one is ever going to come out here to this industrial park to see you. Like, I'm sorry." She was 100% right. For 10 years, really, no one came. But maybe 15 years ago or so, back around 06, 07, the craft brewery business just really blossomed, and breweries started opening up all over Maine. And now Maine's a destination for breweries. And if you come out to this industrial park on a Saturday, I mean, it's mind-boggling. There will be hundreds and hundreds of people, cars lined up on both sides of the road. And the really fun thing is that this is a really collegial, collaborative, friendly business among brewers. So, I mean, people will come out to this industrial park and they'll come to our tasting room and try some of our beers. And then they'll walk across the street to our friends at Foundation Brewing and Battery Steel, Austin Street, Definitive. I mean, so you can come really out here and spend an afternoon and experience a bunch of different brewery cultures. But it's become a huge part of Maine's branding, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the way you guys collaborate too and work together. So I think that's been part of your success as an industry also.
Well, brewers, some of the larger, because I started really small. I started alone, and we didn't have much in terms of resources back then. But the larger breweries were always happy to help me if I ever had a question or issue I needed a part. So I guess I feel in a lot of ways kind of just indebted to give back. I mean, we love doing it, but I feel like that we have a little bit of an obligation to help brewers that were in our shoes, help brewers that are in the shoes now that we were in 20 years ago.
Yeah. Can you tell me the story of starting Allagash and how you chose the name?
Yeah. So the name, I'm not creative with names at all. And, a lot of the beer names that we have that are the more boring names, like the white, the double, the triple, those are just traditional Belgian styles. And those are the names that I, came up with, in air quotes. The really cool names like Interlude and River Trip and Confluence and North Sky, I'm not the one that comes up with those names. We have a very collaborative, innovation here at the brewery, whether it's a beer name or a beer, we're just very collaborative. Everyone participates. The names don't just come out of the marketing department. The recipes don't just come from me, the owner, and Jason, the brewmaster. I'll get a little sidetracked for a second. We have a pilot brewery program here where any of our 150 employees, whether you're in marketing, accounting, the warehouse, sales, if you have an idea for a beer, you can brew it on a little pilot scale. And a lot of those beers become full scale production beers. So anyway, I'll get back. I'm not good with names. And I asked a bunch of buddies of mine to start thinking of names. And what I asked for was, I really wanted a name that would resonate with Mainers. I envisioned only ever selling beer in Maine. I thought we'd just be small and just sell beer in kind of the local community. And I wanted a name that would resonate with Mainers. In a name that had played a role in Maine's history. And a buddy of mine had spent a lot of time up in the Allagash area, and he suggested it with a name, and I loved it. Important part of Maine's history. It kind of conjures up images of like a wild, pristine place. It's easy to say. So I thought it really just hit me right off as, I think I'm going to go with this. But it wasn't me who came up with that. I've told him he has free beer for life, but he doesn't take me up on it enough.
Well, I think I'm going to have to come up with some names for you, Rob. Although I might put you out of business.
Oh yeah, but getting into the story. Yeah, like you mentioned, I stumbled into the business. I got a job washing kegs over at Otter Creek Brewing in Vermont. Wonderful brewery. I still have a great relationship with the owner. He was real supportive. I worked there for a year. I knew I only had been doing it for a year, and I knew there was a lot to learn. I bought every book I could on beer and read it at night and worked during the day. I tried to absorb what I could, but I knew there was a lot I needed to know. So what I tried to keep it really, really simple. Just one beer, no employees, draft only, local market. I didn't have a big budget to start with. I wanted to stay small and family owned. So my parents invested some money. I had a little bit of money to invest, and then I borrowed the rest of the money. But I really did it on a very, very lean budget. And what that meant was I was going to have to basically build the brewery on my own. I couldn't go out and hire a consultant and buy a bunch of brand new fancy equipment. So I got a bunch of dairy equipment, and I love working with my hands. I had done a lot of welding and plumbing and carpentry and electrical type stuff. And that's one of the things that attracted me to brewing in general. And so I knew that I'd be spending probably a year building this brewery with my own hands, doing this work, and presumably a lifetime running it. And I kind of thought to myself, what's the point in making a beer that people could already get if I'm going to spend all this time and energy, building this thing and then running it? If I'm going to go to all this trouble, I want to offer something unique, something people couldn't already get. And I looked at the Belgian brewing tradition as an opportunity to do that. There were a lot of breweries brewing beer in the British tradition and German tradition and Pils tradition. The Pacific Northwest Pale Ales were coming into the area, and they were all fabulous beers. But I didn't want to make a beer, one of those beers that people could get already. So I looked to the Belgian brewing tradition as this opportunity to really give people a unique beer experience.
Yeah, well, it is unique and uniquely delicious. So thank you.
Well, it's funny too, because, I started with the white beer, which is a cloudy beer. It's traditional Belgian yeast. It's spiced. I mean, people hadn't seen or, tasted or heard of a beer like this ever at the time. And I used to go into accounts and it's cloudy. That's why they used to traditionally serve the beer in these glasses in the old days, 100 years ago, because it was so cloudy. So is it coffee? Is it beer?
Might be beer, might be wine.
Might be beer, but yeah, this was given to me actually by the gentleman who reintroduced this style to the world in the mid 60s, Pierre Celis. So I kind of treasure this cup. But, I actually feel like I succeeded giving people this unique experience, but the downside was for the first 10 years, the beer didn't sell. I used to walk into accounts and pour a sample of it into a glass, and the first thing anyone would say is, what's wrong with it? Why does it look like this? Why does it taste like this? So the first 10 years were a slog, that's for sure.
That must have been kind of scary for you.
You know, it's funny. I'm so bullheaded. I just kept going. And luckily things did take off after about a decade. Probably if it had kept going the way it did, we wouldn't have lasted. But I'm pretty bullheaded until someone like stops me from doing something. I'll just keep doing it if I believe in it.
What's your birth sign? I'm just curious.
Cancer.
Oh, Cancer. Oh, you have a birthday sometime in June, or did you just have it?
Early July.
Oh,
yeah. It's in like 7 days.
There you go.
I kind of forgot about it. I try not to think about birthdays these days. They seem to be like coming very rapidly.
Yeah. I'm trying to do the Benjamin Button thing and go back every year if I can.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah. So how has Allagash responded to the pressures of the pandemic?
So the pandemic, I think I'm already trying to block it out of my head. It was quite a shock to us. We went into the pandemic with a business model that relied on restaurants and bars. 70% of our business was the restaurant and bar channel. And not only that, our footprint, it's a 17-state footprint that's concentrated, mostly on the East Coast, Chicagoland, and then California. So they basically it was a laundry list of markets that shut down. So literally on March 16th, Monday, March 16th, every one of our distributors called and canceled all of their draft orders. Draft alone is 65% of our business. Bottles and cans and restaurants are another 5%. So basically, literally in one day, 70% of our business went away. And, additionally, we had just gotten back from a trip to Colorado where I guess there was a lot of COVID. After a day of dealing with distributors canceling all their orders, I ended up that night with COVID. So I spent the first 2 weeks of the crisis managing my way through it with COVID. And I didn't end up in the hospital, but it wasn't a fun 2 weeks. So it was to lose that much of your business without any kind of heads up. I mean, it was a real shocker. We initially reacted by, number one, prioritizing our employees. We set up a lot of, all of our, anyone that didn't need to be here on the administrative staff, we made accommodations for them to immediately work off-site. We put a lot of very stringent procedures in place to keep our people healthy here on site for anyone who is here making the beer. And then we prioritize not laying anyone off. And we figured out, this is before PPP, we figured out how to make it work for a couple months. But then I think like everyone, we assumed things would come back after a couple months. Well, when it became obvious that it wasn't going to come back, by then, luckily, we had PPP, but we were in this situation where we still had a model that was 70% reliant on bars and restaurants. And we were going to go out of business if we just continued reliance on that. So in early May of 2020, we basically completely retooled the business to survive long-term in the off-premise, grocery, liquor, convenience, basically bottle and can segment. And luckily, just prior to the pandemic, we finished a 1.5-year project of installing a high-speed canning line. And we essentially took what was a 3 to 4 year plan to develop the can side of our business, and we condensed it into 3 months. And we did 3 or 4 years worth of rollouts, new packaging, new items. We restructured our sales team. We talked about the beers differently. And we literally in 3 months built a business in conjunction with expense cuts that could last indefinitely just with bottles and cans and no longer relied on draft beer.
Well, that's awesome. And didn't the sales from Hannaford's and other convenience stores pick up as people were doing more and more home dining?
It did. You know, the problem for us was going into the pandemic, that was only 30% of our business.
Right.
So that in the beer industry, that channel of business saw about a 20% lift, which is great for businesses who went into the pandemic with only 10 to 20% of their business in that channel. Because
Right.
they actually, or excuse me, with only 10 to 20% of their business in bars and restaurants and 80 to 90% of their business in grocery stores, they really saw a lift from this. But we only had 30% of our business. So that natural 20% lift didn't go too far in making up the 70% shortfall that we had. So it was very problematic for us given the model that we had. And it was a model that served us well, but it turns out it isn't such a great model during a pandemic.
And what are the percentages now that the pandemic the world is opening up again, basically?
So we went from 70% basically restaurant and bar and 30% off premise to almost a 50-50 mix now. So there's been a very, very significant mix. And it's a mix that we were pointed towards strategically anyway, but we looked at it more, we move very, I'll say, methodically here. You know, we don't take huge risks. We don't like to bet the farm on things. We just like to be very thoughtful and methodical. And we had you know, like I said, a 4 or 5 year plan to move towards that mix, but COVID forced us to do it in 12 months instead of 4, 5, 6 years.
Well, it sounds like you have a really good team there, and you probably all put your heads together. And as you said, you were disciplined and thoughtful and methodical.
I mean, we have an amazing team, a passionate team. And, you know, during COVID, we really prioritized the team and the people here. Like I said, we really worked hard not to lay anyone off, and we didn't lay anyone off. And when we got a few months into it, we realized that basically 100% of us was just struggling in different ways with everything that was going on in our work life and in our home life. And we actually, we didn't make any benefits reductions, and we even engaged a local counseling outfit here called WellSpace. And we booked 10 hours a week at 100% company paid for. And we made that 10 hours a week of counseling available to employees here, completely anonymous. They could reach out to WellSpace, set up an hour for counseling. And it was pretty well utilized. And we're actually we're still offering that. So we really worked hard to do everything we could to support the team that was getting us through this COVID nightmare.
Well, actually, that's the reason that you and I are on this podcast right now, is because I was working with WellSpace during COVID.
Oh.
And so I was working with your team because you were kind of their first big client, essentially. So
I did not know. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I witnessed how much you care about your people during COVID. I saw that was happening. But of course, it's all confidential. We should say, like, that's one of the things. Like, I have no idea who from your place, you know, was taking part in it, but the way it's set up is beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I it was the idea of Celine, who's our director of HR, and you know, right when I heard it, I was like, let's absolutely make this happen. That's an amazing idea, and it's you know, that in and of itself doesn't get us all through this, but it's, you know, one of the many things that we did to support employees. It's been a tough 15 months or 14 or however long it's been.
Yeah, it has.
And
I mean, so many companies offer healthcare, and they'll offer eyeglasses and, you know, eye care, dental care, but you know, what's going on up here between your two ears? That's pretty important too. So
yeah.
kudos to you for acknowledging that.
Thanks.
That's great. So when did Allagash become a certified B Corp, and what was that process like, and what does being a B Corp mean?
So being a B Corp, it essentially means when we make decisions, not only do we consider the shareholders, we consider the stakeholders. And the stakeholders, the way B Corp, generally outlines it is the community, the employees, and the environment. And we basically are required to have a third party come in, B Labs, and certify that when we do make decisions, we consider those stakeholders in addition to shareholders. And of course, most businesses only prioritize shareholders. And they have obligations to prioritize shareholders over all other. But we as a certified B Corp need to consider the stakeholders when we make decisions. And it's something that we had been looking at for a number of years before we became certified. And we really looked at it as something that was completely aligned with how we've approached business from day one. We've always considered our employees when we make decisions. We've always had a robust benefits package. We've had a robust HR department. We have 4 full-time people in our HR department for a company of 150 employees. We've always prioritized the environment. We've prioritized the community. We have a strong philanthropy program where just prior to COVID, we were giving about $375,000 a year back to the local community. COVID shrunk that budget a little, but not by a ton. It still exceeded $300,000 last year. So these have always been priorities of ours. So we looked at it as really being aligned with how we do business. But as we looked at actually becoming certified and having a third party come in with rigorous standards and hold us to those standards, we were kind of, even though granted it's a lot of work going through the certification process, it's probably a easily 50-page double-sided document with a very extensive questionnaire that basically every department here had to get involved with. But we were really inspired and excited by the potential that these rigorous standards would offer to this business to basically improve on all of these fronts. And, we feel like indeed it has led to a lot of improvements with these things that are real important to us. One thing that a bunch of things have kind of surprised me. I mean, one thing that jumps right out that surprised me is how B Labs in the process prioritizes documentation. Everything needs to be documented. And, with water use reduction per barrel of beer. That's something we've prioritized for 15 or so years. And we've really been a very, very high performer in the industry with using just a minimum amount of water, not wasting water to make each barrel of beer. And I thought we would ace that section of the assessment. But we, in fact, got hardly any credit for it, despite our high performance, because we didn't have a documented plan. We didn't have a written plan that was universally communicated throughout the organization with goals. So since then, we have put a plan together. It's documented, it's socialized here in writing, and we're even saving more water. So, I'm a believer in the B Corp status and B Labs in that assessment. It really is delivering tangible value to things that are important to us.
Yeah. Well, measure what matters is the phrase that comes to mind. And if you don't try to measure it, it's probably not going to happen. It's not going to be a priority.
Yeah, or you can't manage what you don't measure. And
right.
Yeah, same concept and philosophy and approach. And we have, we're managing things, documenting things, measuring things that we weren't before, and it's delivering value for sure. It's funny too. You need to score 80 out of 200 points on the assessment to be certified, and I thought we'd ace it. I thought we'd easily skate through to certification. I think we got something like 82.5 or 83.5 points. I mean, we just squeaked by, which in some ways I was kind of like, darn, I thought we were doing really good with all this stuff. But in other ways, to me, it just shows the potential that we have to improve on these fronts, on the stakeholder fronts.
Right, exactly. Well, it reminds me of a book that I read when I first started my business called The E-Myth Revisited, which was about documentation and creating processes and procedures. And that was with regard to like pushing things down to the lowest possible person in the company. And if you have a checklist of these are all the things we need to do every day to repeat our processes, that helps kind of build a company. But what you're talking about is having those kind of checklists and processes and procedures, but with measurable outcomes too. So I like that very much.
Absolutely. And to your point, if only leadership is doing it, it's not going to get done. Like everyone in the organization needs to lift to get done. If we have 150 people like pulling in the right direction, pushing on the flywheel in the same direction, whatever analogy you want to use.
Right.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing.
Yeah. And how about Allagash's sustainability practices? Can you tell me about those?
Yeah, so a lot going on that front. One of the things that pops right into my head, because we were actually just talking about this, we set out 5 years ago, which it kind of in some ways seems like yesterday. And actually, I got inspired because we buy a lot from Patagonia, the shirts from Patagonia. And we were out there visiting the corporate headquarters, and I ran into the founder, Yvonne Chenard, who's really inspirational to me. And we just started talking about like native grains and how things were grown, on the local level, and they've kind of disappeared since, and everything's just been commoditized and industrialized and centralized, thousands of miles away. And I just kind of thought, I was like, I wonder if we can start buying more of our raw materials in Maine. And I had heard that there were a couple. There was one maltster that was opening up. There was a farmer up north that was growing malt grade barley and maybe floor malting on a tiny scale. And honestly, even before that conversation, I would have thought, there's no way this is going to get scaled up. But I kind of thought, why not like put an ambitious 5-year plan together to do our part in helping scale this up. So we basically just said, we're going to buy 1 million pounds of grain that's grown in Maine and processed in grain. So processed meaning dried, packaged, malted, by the year 2021. And, to do that, you just can't say that and expect it to naturally unfold. We had to sit down with farmers, maltsters, and say, this is our plan. What do you need from us? This is what we'll need from you. Is this something you're excited about? And we're making it happen. I think this, last year we did about 750,000 pounds. This year, I think we'll hit 1 million pounds. We definitely would have, were it not for last year's drought. And this year is not looking so good either so far. So the yield is way down. So it's going to be a close call. But anyway, that to me, and that's a way, interestingly enough, that helps sustainability because we're not hauling this grain 1,500 miles. It's contributing to the community. So it's just contributing in a lot of different ways. Another cool project which we just launched is a co-op project. It wasn't that long ago when we remembered that it was very hard for us to side stream some of the things that especially came in as packaging. So for instance, whenever we got raw materials, the pallets would be stretch wrapped. And that stretch wrap was hard to dispose of. We couldn't afford a baler. We couldn't accumulate enough of it to get someone to come and pick it up for us. Even cardboard was like that. It's just it was hard. It's hard to find a practical way to find like a really good dedicated stream for those waste materials. At our scale now, we're able to do that. We bale up all our stretch wrap. We bail up cardboard, and we actually, sell that. Those pack tech containers, those plastic tops of 4-packs and 6-packs, we have collection here in our tasting room for customers, and we collect it. When we have a full pallet, we send that back to the pack tech manufacturer. So we thought, why not extend this and create a co-op program for other brewers in the community? I mean, now there's 180 breweries in Maine. There's probably 30 or 40 within quick driving distance of Allagash. So we just launched this co-op program. We got a couple more balers, and now we're collecting a lot of those materials from breweries who have no practical way to dispose of them in a sustainable way. So we're really, really excited about that. It's going very well so far. And we're doing work on other fronts. We're donating 10 cents for every barrel of beer that we make to Sebago Clean Waters. And then there's all these little employees just have these amazing ideas with waste here. Like our bottles come in on pallets, and they have these green straps around them that are plastic, but they really contaminate the recycling stream. They gum up the equipment that processes it. So we were having to throw it away. But an employee did research, and they found this equipment that basically we can feed these plastic bands into we call it pallet kelp, because it looks like kelp, the bands. But you can feed these plastic bands into a machine that chops them into little 2-inch lengths and fills a big bin, and then we can send that whole bin back to the company that makes these plastic straps. So a lot of employees coming up with really cool ideas to side stream waste.
You have so many good stories to tell. I think that whoever's doing your PR must be just like always telling good stories to the media.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's awesome. And we're going to talk about your PR in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with more from Rob Tod. I just wanted to talk a little bit about my new book, which is Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand. And there's a free download at prmaven.com/giveaway. Rob, you might just be getting one in the mail, just saying. Might even be autographed by the author. And we're going to just take a little commercial break and be back with more from Rob Tod now.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do, but you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool, a message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
So welcome back to the PR Maven Podcast, and we're here talking with Rob Tod from Allagash Brewing. And Rob, now I want to ask you, what role has PR played in the growth of the Allagash brand?
So, I mean, we're starting to get out of my area of expertise, and that is why we employ PR experts for this stuff, and that's why we have a marketing department. But I can sure give you my take on it. A lot of the things that we've been talking about on this show, like sustainability efforts, BCorp, how we engage with employees here, our innovation program here at the brewery, all of these things, it's hard to get those things front and center for people. I mean, there are things that are things that are very important to us, like to me personally, to our culture. But I mean, the world is there's so much going on. For us to get those across on our website, it's difficult. It's difficult for people to navigate their way through to those stories. It's difficult for us to do it through advertising. So PR, I think, is a great way to get those things that are important to us that we'd like to talk about and have an audience for. It's a great way for us to get those things like front and center, like those values that are important to us. It really is a great tool for us to get those things front and center for people. Otherwise, it's just difficult for people to find them unless they're actually going in and searching for them. But we all know how overwhelmed we are with just like messaging these days.
Yeah, but I'm sure that you have a lot of brand ambassadors or like brand raving fans that they're eager to hear any kind of news story that's coming out of Allagash. So I'm sure that, again, your marketing and PR people are continually creating content to tell the stories of the good things that are happening there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And how about awards? What awards has Allagash won?
Well, we've absolutely been blessed by awards. I mean, volume isn't ever something. As we've grown, the volume has delivered value from us in a lot of ways that I wouldn't necessarily have expected, like a much more robust philanthropy program, better employee benefits, higher quality equipment. So we are definitely not motivated for volume just for the sake of volume, but as we've grown, it's delivered good. And, I think awards they're kind of similar. Like we've never gone out and said, we want to win this like gold medal for the white this year. We want to, get this recognition award. We're not motivated by those things. We're motivated by the work, the work that ends up ultimately delivering some of the awards we've been blessed enough to get. That's what really like inspires us, that journey. But we really have been blessed with a number of awards. The Allagash, in the Great American Beer Fest, we've won 15 gold medals, and I think 8 of those has it been 15? I think it's 15 golds, and 8 of them have been for Allagash White. That's probably Great American Beer Fest and World Beer Cup. So we've been honored for those medals. And honestly, in the early days, that was the only recognition that we got because the beer really wasn't selling. So, it was wonderful getting those awards. Jason Perkins, our brewmaster, won a really prestigious industry award that's given every year. I think it was awarded to him 3 years ago. It's the Russell Scherer Award for innovation in the industry. So out of 8,000 brewers, Jason was recognized for that. Our tasting room won a Visit Portland Award. And we actually, I forget what exactly it was called, but we won an award from the governor for sustainability. So we were very, very honored by that. So we have been blessed with these awards. It is nice to get the recognition for the work that everyone has done to deliver the awards. But I think for us, like the work leading up to the awards is what's much more like inspiring to us. But it is nice to get the awards. It really is. It's nice to get like some recognition for that work for sure.
Well, I think you're sort of a magnet that you attract good people and you make good beers, but you attract good awards and good juju all around.
We do have an amazing team. That to me has been one of the kind of saddest things about COVID is literally my favorite part of this business is like coming in here every day and walking the floor and like seeing the crew on the canning line and then coming up and like walking through the accounting department and seeing them in the HR department and, sales and marketing and working markets with our reps. I mean, I really, really like and I get inspired by spending time with the people here. And that just got like completely pulled away from us when COVID hit. And it's really nice that it is coming back now.
Yeah. Really Where can people buy Allagash?
You mean region-wise?
Yeah, region-wise or stores or restaurants.
Yeah, so right now, 18 states plus DC. We have a little bit of an odd footprint, just like we had that odd mix of restaurant and bar and off-premise grocery. But basically up and down the East Coast, so from Maine to Georgia, and the metro markets in that area are our big markets. So Boston, DC, Philly, Atlanta, New York. And then, of course, Maine is a very, very strong market for us. But then you have to leapfrog to Chicagoland. And Chicagoland and Wisconsin, you can buy the beer. And then you have to leapfrog again to the southern 2/3 of California. But, that's our basic footprint.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you go right across the country to California. That's awesome.
It's really nice to be able to visit that market.
Yeah, I know.
January and in February. I regularly schedule trips at that time.
That's one of the things I like about having my own business is like business trips.
Exactly.
One time I had to go on a business trip to New Zealand. It's like, yeah.
Maybe we should explore selling beer in New Zealand.
Yeah, that was the best business trip ever. Mm-hmm. So, Rob, is there a book, podcast, or a website that has helped you in your career or your life, and why?
So, it's funny. I don't know if I've read a book from front to back since college. I can't do it. I have, and if you talk to anyone here I deal with, and say, what's Rob's attention span? They would be like, half an hour at the most. Maybe he can get through an hour. I'm fidgety, but I have a ton of books, and I'll pick one up and read a chapter and put it down, and then I'll pick another one up and read a different chapter, and I just kind of bounce around like that. So I'm not a good person to maybe ask that, but the ones that pop into my head that I do bounce back to a lot. I really like Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard. And I like how it talks about businesses having a greater purpose, work-life balances in businesses, in focus on quality in business. So, that book resonates with me in a lot of ways. Again, I go back to it in bits and pieces. I like Sun Tzu's Art of War. I feel like I wasn't in the military or anything. I don't know anything about military strategy, but that talks a lot about just competition, strategy with competition. And I love competition.
Were you an athlete in school?
I was a bad athlete, but I was an athlete. If it involved a ball or a puck, I was terrible at it. I was an okay skier. I was on the ski team at Middlebury until I discovered beer.
Oh, wow.
Until I discovered beer and playing in a band. And then I was asked to prioritize.
I've been to the Middlebury Snowball many times because I have two sons that raced for D1 for Colby and Colby Sawyer. So we went to the Middlebury Carnival every single year for 8 years.
Yeah, I was on the Nordic team for 2 years.
All right, nice.
Alpine ski, tele ski, those more individual sports suit me better. Now I'm completely addicted to surfing. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, in that Good to Great by Jim Collins pops.
Oh yeah.
in my head. You know, I like a lot of the reference to focus. I'm just a big believer in focus. So maybe I just
It's funny. It's funny you say that, but you can't read a book.
I know it is. It's ironic. I think it just reinforces like my belief in focus. But yeah, I can only focus on that book for maybe 20 minutes.
I'm the same way. I don't think I had ADHD growing up, but I think I have it now. And I don't know if it's a business owner thing or if it's brought on by social media or what. But yeah, I do have a really hard time. And sometimes I can't read a book, but I really try to like focus. I mean, it's one of my goals because I know that when I'm into a good book, I feel really good about it. So anyway, well, Rob, I feel like you and I mean, I would love to sit and have a beer with you sometime.
Let's do it.
Okay. Okay. I would love that. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I think you're awesome. I think you have an awesome brand, an awesome company. And I want to thank you because I know you're really busy. Here we are going into one of the biggest weekends of the year, and you're spending 45 minutes talking with me. So thank you.
This is a really fun, like change of pace. So I enjoyed it. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, well, thank you. So if people want to get in touch with you, they can send you an email.
Yeah, info@allagash.com is probably the best way to get in touch.
Okay, that's great. And people can email me at nancy@prmaven.com if they want to give me any suggestions or feedback or whatever. But I want to thank you, Rob, and I want to thank everybody in PR Maven Nation for joining us today. And I hope that you'll join me again next week. So thanks again, Rob.
Thanks for having me. Let's get that beer soon.
Yeah. Yay. It'll be on you too.
It's a deal.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven Podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the skills and games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.